Hello and welcome from International JavaScript Conference 2018 in London. My name is Ann-Kathrin Klose and I'm talking to Joel Lord from Auth0. Joel just gave a talk today about asynchronicity in JavaScript, and maybe we should start very easy and very low level with a question about why this might be an issue for people learning JavaScript.
Well, a lot of people, when they start playing with JavaScript, the language is a little bit hard to get a good grasp around at the beginning. A lot of people come from different backgrounds. They come from PHP or from Java, where the instructions are very linear. Like one goes after the other, one line of code follows the other, and it kind of makes sense when you read at it. In JavaScript, it's a little bit different, where you have what we call callbacks, and there's a lot of code that is asynchronous, which means that it gets executed afterwards. So the way that the code that you read it is actually very different than the way that it's executed. So it makes it a lot hard to kind of understand how everything works and how everything will actually be executed when you look at the code.
Okay, JavaScript has different approaches to handling this problem. One of them you named in your session was generators, but they never took off, they never got popular. Why is that?
Yeah, well, there's, like you said, there's a lot of different ways. I mean, we can use callbacks, we can use promises, we can use, and lately in ES6 or 2015 came out the generators, which is kind of a way to create functions that can sort of be used in an asynchronous way. But it's not perfect. It's actually not asynchronous. So it's actually not asynchronous. So that's why we kind of needed to build our own asynchronous processing library around that. So there's a library that you can write, just a few lines of code, and you can wrap your generators with that. And that's how you would make sure that your generators are actually asynchronous.
Asyncwait did prove this issue around generators. How is that?
Well, exactly. That's where Asyncwait came in. So it was really like the next generation, or like a natural evolution of generators. Asyncwait makes sure that each one of the steps returns a promise. So it makes it more easy to handle stuff that is asynchronous, because they will actually be executed one after the other. So by using Asyncwait, you can actually write some code that looks very linear. It's one line of code that gets executed after the other. So you don't have all of those callbacks or all of those weird code syntax that happens in JavaScript.
So there are a lot of different approaches. Can you name another one maybe?
Well, the other one that is often used is promises. So promises were introduced a few years back, probably around 2014 or so. And it's just a way to chain those callbacks in a way that is, one, much more readable, but also much more easy to handle, especially if you have to do error management. So you can really chain all of those promises by using a then method, which when you read out the code, is just do something, then do something else, then do something else. So it makes, once again, for much more readable code.
And is there any state-of-the-art solution, something that just came up in the JavaScript universe?
Well, not really. We're still using the technologies that we used in the 80s or 90s, which is a lot of callbacks. It's always just about like everything else in computer science. It's always about the case where you're using it. It's always about the context where you use it. So the good answer for everything in computer science is actually it depends. Right, so it really depends on what you're trying to do. I'd say that Asyncwait is a great way to use it. It's much readable. It's very, very flexible. So it's great to use. But sometimes it doesn't make a lot of sense. Sometimes an event-based approach is still the best solution, or just a simple callback makes a lot of sense. So really, it's context dependent.
And if someone beginning to learn JavaScript wants to learn how to do asynchronicity, is there any advice you can give a beginner?
Well, they should come to IJS and come to my talk, definitely. But now that one's done. So there's a lot of resources online available. The easiest way is to start by a lot of practice, of course, using callbacks, using promises, and then eventually everything kind of starts to make sense, and everything follows into using Asyncwait. So a lot of practice is usually what is the best tip for any JavaScript developer.
Okay, thank you for the interview.
Thank you.